Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us on this Monday afternoon in December in Melbourne as we're on the slippery slide down for Christmas. We're recording this to make it available for those who can't join us, and I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where I am, the Bunurong people, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and of course anybody who is with us here today. So we're here today to hear from the students who've been working with ESF for the past 10 weeks, doing a study on our behalf, and their work will soon be on the website. And to that end, we're joined by graphic recorder Sally Mazak, and Sally will be creating a live visual representation, she's just given us a wave, of our event to capture the information gathered by the 4 students when they present. So we'll check in with Sally at the end and have a look at her work in progress, and we'll share the finished piece of art with you as part of the students' report. So I'm going to facilitate questions at the end, and I hope they're plentiful. So jot down any questions that you might have. If you want to do it as you're thinking, pop them in the chat. So let me just tell you a little bit about the 4 students. They're students from a University of Massachusetts, which is about 1 hour west of Boston. I was lucky enough to go there last year. And it was pretty amazing to walk across the campus and have somebody random yell out, "Hey, Susan." And it was one of the former students who had been here in Melbourne with me. So WPI, as it's called, or Worcester Polytech Institute, it's a STEM university. So you might think, what on earth are these students doing here in Melbourne working on a mental health related study? So WPI want every student to be part of a global project experience, and the university is committed to ensuring all students have access to its transformative global projects program, and that's an internationally recognised component of the WPI curriculum that immerses student teams in local communities to make a tangible long-term impact on the world. In my plain English, it's about these STEM students not going out and just being totally science focused. So every full-time degree-seeking WPI undergraduate is eligible for some scholarship support to defray some of the costs of this project, off-campus project. So WPI believe that the best way for students to understand and appreciate societal issues is to experience them firsthand. And so through the Global Projects Program, WPI science, engineering and business students immerse themselves in new cultures and tackle unstructured real-world problems in ways that are meaningful to local sponsors like ESF, and life-saving is also one of them this semester, in real communities. So I understand that there is an amazing 42 project centres around the world strategically located in, large international cities to small mountainside villages. And the team have told me that they've got friends this semester in places like Costa Rica, Sweden, a whole range of different places. Melbourne is just one of them. So this team is here with around 20 of their colleagues working on projects this semester. And since 1998, about 1,000 WPI students have conducted 200 projects with Melbourne organisations, ESF being one of them. And some of the terrific work that they've done for us over the years, or in more recent years, is they did a study into what people need to retire well, which we use to inform our Well Beyond program. They did a study on vicarious trauma, which helped to embed change in the sector by recognising the vast range of roles potentially impacted by trauma, not just frontline roles. And they did a study on the impact of the job on families and the impact of the job on kids. And both of those informed our Families Matter strategy. So this work that the students do just doesn't go towards their accreditation and their marks. It's actually used by us very, very well. And those studies are all on the ESF website. So now let me introduce you to the team. We've got Leela, Mia, Abby and Jake. So I'm going to start with you, Leela. And tell us, first of all, what are you studying at WPI?
I'm studying computer science and data science.
Okay. And Jack, what about you?
Hi, I'm a mechanical engineering major, going for a master's in management.
Okay, fantastic. And Mia?
I'm a biology major on a pre-medicine track.
Okay. And Abigail?
I'm a biology and psychology major.
Fantastic. So there's some, you know, Mia and Abby have got some link to mental health. Leela and Jake, not so much. I'm going to remind everybody to put themselves on mute, please, because I can hear some background noise from people. So now I'm going to hand over to Jake to start their presentation and tell us all what they've been doing this term and what they found.
Well, hello, everyone. We are the WPI team that worked with ESF for the last 8 weeks here in Melbourne. Before we came to Australia, we conducted background research, just kind of encompassing all of mental health, and then we planned out our approach for when we arrived. And then once we hit the ground, we interviewed mental health team members of 13 of ESF's member agencies, WorkSafe Victoria, and someone involved in the development of the Thrive at Work framework and Beyond Blue's Good Practice framework. So as mentioned before, this is our team. Some of the topics that we're going to cover during this presentation, firstly, is the goal of every mental health team in the sector, which is to create a mentally healthy workplace for employees and volunteers, where everyone is engaged in their work with a strong connection to support systems. Then we'll go into our findings, which includes a sector-wide overview of the mental health and well-being space, along with the effort put towards each type of program across the sector. Then we'll identify the gap, which was an underdevelopment in the promotion space for programs, and our recommendation, CARE, which serves to fill the gaps and shift the mindset towards creating a thriving workspace. So mental health of employees can be thought similar to an operations vehicle. By keeping the tires fresh and the tank full, you can keep the car in great condition and ready to do its job. That being said, wear is unavoidable, especially in emergency services where a range of psychological hazards are present. Promoting well-being periodically, like changing the oil and tires on a car, is going to keep the vehicle in the best shape possible. If wear is not addressed, you get into the orange section where the car can sputter when starting, get flat tires, begin to break down. Like employees entering the orange in the mental health continuum, it's obvious that the vehicle is struggling to carry out its duty. Failing to recognize these suffering workers or limitations due to workload, for those of you who are at the Learning Network last Wednesday, we went over that briefly. You'll get cars that are fully broken down, which are difficult to repair and tough to get back on the road. For workers, this looks like workers' compensation claims, volunteers leaving, and long, difficult recoveries. And one thing we know about claims in Victoria is that they're becoming more frequent and workers are taking longer to recover, which makes it's becoming more of an issue across the sector. It seems unnatural to wait until a car is fully non-operational to bring it to a shop. So why is that the case with employees' mental health? The goal should be to keep employees in the green, providing support before they break down, so that they're fully operational, excited to do their jobs, and fueled and ready to hit the road. So there was a variety of ideas on what teams prioritize across the sector, but they all point towards these 5 strategic priorities. The first is prevention. This is where organizations work to prevent mental injuries before they occur. An example of this would be reducing exposure or breaks to reduce burnout. Risk assessment helps with understanding where to work within this prevention space, finding out how to best protect workers, often with internal issues like bullying and workload. Treatment is a key component for a lot of programs. It's the most researched area, and there's a variety of treatments based on different mental injuries. And early intervention, again, assists with this treatment, trying to get workers who need treatment as early as possible. And it works to identify troubled workers early on. Education assists in the breakdown of stigma and increasing literacy throughout your organization. Most commonly seen in online trainings, workshops, and leadership development, this is also a vital pillar. Traditionally, the focus has been more on the treatment and education side of things in the sector, but the shift towards prevention is a very welcomed one, providing a more encompassing approach towards mental injury. So this is the Beyond Blue Good Practice Framework. A lot of you guys have seen this before because it was made for emergency services in Victoria, and it's widely used across most organizations. The 3 pillars, protect, promote, and support, cover many of the priorities within the sector. And many organizations have used this framework's ideologies to model their programs and even construct their own frameworks.
As a group, we analyzed 10 different programs that were most commonly provided by your organizations. We weren't necessarily looking at an agency by agency view, but more along the lines of the effort of all agencies towards individual programs. These programs included peer support, chaplaincy, EAPs, leadership training, after deployment check-ins, in-house clinical psychologists, family programs, training and online learning programs, advertisements, and recognition programs. We then scored these agencies in each program on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 being no program in place, 2 a narrow or minimal program, 3 a slightly outdated or improvable program, but that generally covers all bases, 4 a well-rounded program with substantial focus from the mental health team, and 5 a well-established program with a holistic approach or outstanding feature. We chose these metrics to try and determine how much focus and development went into each program. We further broke this down into 1 counting as no program in place, 2 or 3 as a developing program, and 4 or 5 as a well-established program. The average score was calculated for each program by organization, and we will now go pillar by pillar to discuss our findings. In the support space, we see the two programs with the highest average scores and the most usage. These include EAPs and after deployment check-ins, with averages of 3.85 and 3.38. 13 out of 13 and 12 out of 13 agencies ended up using these programs. This matches historical high focus on intervention and critical incident response, and matches a continued focus on addressing mental health after injuries have occurred. In more niche services, such as in-house clinical psychologists and chaplaincies, we actually see the least development. They average 2.46 and 2.3, and the lack of a utilization, counting as 6 out of 13 agencies not using them, shows a small focus. In-house clinical psychology was reported to use significant resources, and chaplaincy seems to be going through a role change as the support becomes more secular. This may explain the lower development in these niche services. Peer support was actually our most surprising finding. It showed relatively low scores at a 2.69 compared to other longstanding programs, and only 9 out of 13 agencies reported using it. This may be due to its reported high resource use, similar to in-house clinical psychologists. This also may be due to it being seen as the first programs that younger mental health teams should roll out after establishment, and many younger mental health teams have just begun rolling out their peer support programs. This may explain some of the lower averages. In the protect pillar, we see more developing programs, with some as high as 9 out of 13 in that developing program category. More recent shift towards protection or prevention is shown in the sector, and advertisement and training and online resources are the highest at or above a 3, with higher scores and more intense focus. There has been a priority on rolling out new content and promoting it, especially in this protection space. In contrast, family programs and leadership trainings show lower development at 2.77 and 2.85. These have been rolled out more recently as well, but didn't have the depth or scope of more general programs. Many agencies have begun offering the ESF Family Guide and Leading for Better mental health programs to create more development in this area. In our final category, the Promote pillar, we see only one significant program. Recognition programs have been a long-standing tradition and average a 2.92 with 12 out of 13 agencies utilizing them. Many organizations actually didn't realize that this program fell in the Promote pillar, and very few provided more day-to-day or peer-to-peer recognition. There's no other programs reported in this space. Other programs such as leadership training, family programs, and peer support that we discussed earlier that could contribute to this pillar showed lower average scores, and all of these findings lead us to a gap in this promotion pillar.
All right, so after we analyzed the programs, we then established the gap. Once we established the gap, we were then turned to the Thrive at Work framework, which was led by the Future of Work Institute at Curtin University. Their vision is that all members of an organization, no matter age, gender, job, or industry, thrive in their work. They define thriving as being energized, feeling valued, and feeling that what you do is valued. They also believe that thriving is being productive, being open to challenges presented, and having the opportunity to learn and grow. Work should not be a place to simply survive each day, but rather good work provides opportunity for meaning, connection, learning, and growth, which in turn supports employees to thrive. The Thrive at Work framework contains 3 pillars: mitigate illness, prevent harm, and promote thriving. The remainder of this presentation will be focused on the promoting thriving pillar in fueling your cars. Here you can see the Thrive at Work's promoting thriving pillar. Their 3 main focuses are promoting purpose and growth, promoting connection, and increasing personal resources for thriving. After having the opportunity to talk with Karina Juritsma, a professor at Curtin University and a large contributor to this framework, we were able to identify key points of thriving as it relates to the emergency services sector. With this insight, we created CARE. CARE is an acronym that highlights the important aspects of a thriving workplace and a tool that can be used by the sector to increase focus on the promotion space. The C in CARE stands for connection. Countless research has shown the importance of connection between leaders and their teams. In emergency services in particular, there must be a high level of trust between a leader and their team. A high trust organization is one in which employees feel safe to take risks, express themselves freely, and innovate. Leaders have the ability to set the tone for their organization in this regard. It's important to remember that leaders don't have to be the CEO or a senior manager at your organization, but rather just a mentor. In order to build this connection, leaders must offer more of a focus on personal relationships. We know that workload can get very high and that everyone in emergency services is often very busy, but taking time to check in with team members can go a really long way. With these check-ins, make sure that they are proactive and not reactive. Don't just check in when something goes wrong, but rather be a familiar face. Having a personal connection with your team is vital and will allow your members to feel more inclined to lean on one another and reach out when needed. The A in CARE stands for acknowledgement. Through research and interviews, a common theme that we found was that oftentimes emergency service workers will end up getting so caught up in the tasks at hand that they end up forgetting just how important the work that they are doing and the positive impact that they leave on the community each day. When asking member agencies of ESF about their promotion programs, 12 out of 13 agencies highlighted their award and recognition programs as their only programs solely focused on promotion. Awards that are nominated from peers, leaders, and community members are all positively received and often presented at annual ceremonies like you can see here with LSB. A good example of this as well is the Rotary Community Service Awards, which is designed to recognize emergency service personnel who have gone above and beyond their call of duty. Community nominated awards tend to be especially appreciated as it allows emergency service workers to see that they are acknowledged at a wider level. Another piece of the acknowledgement pillar is providing your members an opportunity to be heard. Here you can see the book titled We Stood Up that was produced by the SES, where 6 members of their organization were able to share their experiences and tell their stories through the 2019 and 2020 bushfires. Research has also been done by a previous WPI group that addressed the importance of more than just a thank you and can be found on ESF's website. We know that a lot of these strategies are already being used throughout the sector, but continuing to focus and put intentional meaning behind it can be very beneficial for your organization and the members.
stands for relationships, which can be developed with two primary support systems: family and friends outside of the workplace, and coworkers and colleagues within the workplace. Stronger relationships are improved through programs that allow workers' loved ones to feel like they can assist in the mental health of the people that they care about. These can include workshops targeted towards families, visits to the workplace to see the programs designed specifically for the workers, or resources sent to households that include risks and mechanisms to help, such as the ESF Families Guide pictured to the right. Relationships within the workplace can be strengthened by encouraging workers to spend time with one another outside of work, usually at casual gatherings such as barbecues or other social activities in the community. By building personal relationships outside of work, workers can become comfortable speaking with one another about vulnerable topics at work. Workplace relationships can also be developed with peer support networks and clinical psychologists by interacting with them during a regular day at work, even if they do not feel a need to access these supports at the time of these visits, which we see in the image on the left. These relationships allow workers to strengthen their support system to feel comfortable reaching out for help if they're feeling unwell. The E in CARE stands for empowerment. Workers who feel empowered are better equipped to respond to challenges and recover quickly. Employees and workers should feel empowered to speak up to leaders and managers about how they feel. Empowerment can be accomplished by allowing individuals to feel in control of their job and life paths, fostering workers' feeling of greater purpose in their job's role, and encouraging positive practices of well-being and literacy in the workplace. Amy Edmondson on How Fearless Organizations Succeed stated, "If leaders want to unleash individual and collective talent, they must foster a psychologically safe climate where employees feel free to contribute ideas, share information, and report mistakes." The confidence that comes from a worker's feeling of empowerment can come from a variety of sources, but can be nurtured in the workplace through interactions with leaders, peers, and other colleagues with whom they interact with regularly. Empowerment can also stem from a sense of belonging, which can be fostered through diversity and inclusion initiatives that ensure that every member of the organization has a place and is accepted. The image here shows the Red Cross's Connected Women event, where migrant women formed connections in their community, thus allowing them to feel empowered. Our interview with a Thrive at Work researcher revealed that some key elements of an individual's thriving include continuous opportunities for learning on a regular basis and feeling as though one's work is purposeful and part of a larger goal within the organization. In conclusion, through our interviews and additional research, we developed an understanding of the sector's focus, including their strategic priorities and available programs. We then sorted the programs into Beyond Blue's 3 pillars and established a visible gap in the promotion space. While we know that prevention and support are important, promotion is also very important and cannot be ignored. It is imperative in ensuring that employees and volunteers are capable of serving their communities and is an easy and affordable enhancement to the mental health of your organization. These findings led us to the recommendation that promotion is best achieved by striving towards Thrive at Work's model, and this thriving can be streamlined through care. When you have a car, you want to keep up with its maintenance, even if there's not damage on it at the time. You wouldn't wait until the wheels fall off to start taking care of your car, so don't wait until your workers are in crisis to start providing them with support. You all spend resources maintaining emergency service vehicles such as ambulances and fire trucks, so now you need to focus on maintaining your emergency service workers and their mental health. We want to extend our appreciation to the ESF for this opportunity, as well as everyone who agreed to meet with us for interviews, which allowed us to come to our findings. Does anyone have any questions for us?
Thank you, Abby. Does anybody have any questions? Does anybody have any questions?
I can ask one.
Yes.
I just wanted to know, what did they find most surprising out of their research?
Oh, is that Mariella?
No, it's Jody.
Oh, Jody. Yeah, what did you find most surprising?
I can go ahead and take this one. I think we were really surprised just on our findings on peer support, just because in our background research, we had seen so much about how peer support is developed within just care for emergency service workers. So it was kind of surprising to see not as much development in that space.
Okay, that's interesting. Any other questions? Richard Riley.
Hi team, that was great. Thank you. Can you hear me, Susan?
Yes.
Thank you. Well done, guys. That was great. Did you have any, or was there any discrepancy between the various items from a financial perspective that you've come across, or the amount of monies that organisations are putting into the various, connections, acknowledgements, relationships, empowerments, for example?
I can also answer this one. So we have found that we would say, we can't say like any specific numbers, but most of the funding is going toward this more intervention and prevention space and not very much in the promotion space at all. Just because, especially after large events such as bushfires, there's this big emphasis on like obviously caring for employees and volunteers. And so less of that more future facing development is funded.
Thank you.
Karina, I'm going to put you on the spot as the person who wrote from Curtin University Future of Work Institute, who developed the Thrive model, which was interesting that nobody here in Victoria was using that model. And we view that as being sort of a new dimension, really. What's your reaction to seeing the students' work?
One, I really like your CARE acronym and what you've captured there. I think it's really lovely, and it really does. It's always nice to see, I guess, different perspectives. Now, when we developed Thrive at Work, we really came in with an idea of work design, and the agenda really was around making people understand the importance of work. So it leans in quite a lot to just the working environment. I think you have nicely captured the sort of intersection between family and community that sits around this, which I do think within a first responder environment, is a blurred line, particularly when you have volunteers as well. So I think it's very appropriate. You've still really captured the connection and the acknowledgement, sides of things that sit there, which I think are very understood, like that was there. I think you noted too that sometimes there are a lot of things that happen in organisations where we are only really thinking of individuals and not the work itself that was there. So it's also nice to see that, that ability to be recognised, but for your work, and to be able to have those supports are there as well. So it's probably not surprising to me, that we sort of have talked more from a looking after the broken, car, if we're using your analogy perspective, but it's definitely there. And you said you've seen it in your interviews, these things do come up, but just to see it all housed collectively within a framework rather than sort of isolated pieces. We look after each other through prevention, and that prevention isn't just about not breaking people, right? It's also about more meaning and purpose and more active. So I don't know if I've answered your question, Susan, there, but yeah, I like your CARE model very much. First time that I've seen what you've put out, but I think it's really nice.
So thanks, Karina. Would somebody from one of the agencies like to just give the students some insight about, how this work has made them think about what they're doing at an organisational level? Would anybody like to make a comment there? I can see there's a number of the Learning Network online. I don't want to point to somebody, but if anybody would like to respond to that, it'd be great. Michael Morgan.
Hi, Susan, and thanks for the team for the presentation. Really interesting. I'm with Fire Rescue Victoria. And it does resonate with something that we've just done. The Victorian Auditor General has reviewed, and part of the challenges we're facing is the awareness within our workforce as well. So really about how do we promote the messages and get information to our staff. So we were finding there were pockets that felt that they didn't have access to information. So I think it's really important. Also, did you find anything about culture in organisations where there might be resistance to I guess looking after that mental health and wellbeing, so that cultural drive? Was there anything you saw in that?
Yeah, so we definitely saw within many organizations that stigma level. A lot of emergency service workers tend to be, a lot of the volunteers were farmers, older generational farmers who just don't really believe that mental health can affect them. So it's kind of getting those people on board and finding ways to increase mental health literacy that we think would help bring the promotion programs up. But yeah, we definitely did find that stigma affected almost every agency, especially in the volunteer space.
Thanks, Mia. Suzanne.
Hi, everyone. Hi, WPI students. Lovely to hear your presentation and see the work come to fruition. Just from an agency or an ERV perspective, it's great to have that opportunity to help input and shape something. I think that's really key to staff owning those pieces of research as they become the strategies for our sector to stay and for staff to stay well. So I think it's a pivotal part of the ownership and accountability piece. I'm also a little bit curious about the influence of rapid change, given how changing and movable our environment has been, particularly within the Victorian government. So I was wondering whether or not there was any sort of anything came up in relation to the rapid changes that the sector has faced in a short period of time.
I'm not sure that the students can answer that, but I think that's a fantastic continuing conversation question, Suzanne.
Yes.
That maybe the Learning Network and the Mental Health Advisory Group and so forth can consider as to how their findings and their recommendations could be applied to that. Of, you know, we know how everyone's feeling at the moment, and so thriving is obviously, helping people to thrive is obviously a good balance to that. So maybe we could apply that to a conversation in the future.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
What about Doug?
Thank you, Susan. Great to see you guys presenting. Thank you so much. I found it really moving and evocative that you had the picture of the migrant women from the Red Cross. And in my mind, of course, I think of empowerment as the most difficult one to make concrete of the four dimensions of care. So I'm wondering what you think we could learn by maybe zeroing in on a case like migrant women in that condition to understand what some of the greatest threats to a sense of empowerment might be, or what might be some of the best paths to empowerment. Any ideas on that?
I think that some of the bigger threats to empowerment are feeling stuck and stagnant in your job's role and feeling like you don't have a place to move forward and grow in your work. And that can kind of be mitigated by having consistent check-ins with your leaders and saying, okay, well, where are you going next? What do you want to get out of this organization? And what can we do to help you? And allowing the workers to speak their mind and kind of guide that conversation to exactly what they want, so they feel that sense of empowerment to speak up. And then in the future, if their personal needs aren't feeling met, they can go on and reach out again and say, okay, I want to go this way. This is what I'm working towards. What can you do to help me?
Okay.
And going off of that, it's kind of the importance of those check-ins. Like we touched briefly, throughout the sector, it seems that a lot of check-ins are, okay, what's been going wrong and only addressing the wrong. But I think with those check-ins, having it implemented, where do we want to go? Where do you want to go with your career? Where do you want to go as an organization? And having your members have a say in that goal overall is what empowerment's all about. So
Yeah.
without that, I mean, you'll be stuck, like Abby said, in your spot.
Yeah, of course, I think. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go, Doug.
So that's clear that feeling stuck is a part of being disempowered. But I'm just curious, like I'm thinking what the next step could be. What will the next group do? And the idea that we could look at migrant women and see how some things are beyond their control. Obviously, they've been forced to be migrant women in one way, or many of them, refugee women or asylum-seeking women or something like that. So those are real impediments to easy roads to empowerment, it seems to me. And that's
So,
kind of
Doug,
what
that might be something that the Red Cross chooses to do. It
Yeah.
wouldn't be something that ESF does because our focus is on the emergency service workers, but that's certainly something Red Cross could potentially look at for sure.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. What about the acronym CARE, Michael? What do you think? Oh, sorry, you put your hand up. So I'm going to ask you.
I preempted a question, Susan. Look, from my experience, and the CARE acronym is fantastic, and I really like it. And you talked about families and the impact on families. And through my experience in a couple of fire services, one of the biggest challenges is how do we get to families? Like we're talking about messaging now to emergency service workers, and then there's almost like a firewall between the worker and their families. So how do we get information and connect to families that may identify that someone maybe isn't, if we use the analogy of the car, isn't running that well and needs a service, but how do they assist? Have you sort of done some thought around that? Because I think in the programs there were 12 of the 13 agencies that have family programs, but I know from a previous fire service we used to do induction nights for recruits and their families around EAP and all the support mechanisms in place to support them. But that was the only opportunity we really had to connect with family, because beyond that, privacy issues and any other, there's no real way of getting them. And if someone doesn't want to share that information with their family, they won't. And I know that families suffer through a lot of exposure to trauma and challenges that individuals face.
What you said about the induction nights, we did find that the organizations that had induction nights felt that they were very helpful in allowing their families to know exactly what was available for them. And in addition to that, sending out resources to the families' households that have what those workplace risks are, just kind of reiterating that and providing them with all of the support phone numbers and resources so that they feel like they have a role in keeping up that well-being. Those we found to be really, really helpful.
Michael, as you know, we applied for a grant, at the federal government to study that topic exactly. How do we reach families better? Because it is very hard. Unfortunately, we weren't successful, but we haven't given up, and we're going to pursue, continue to pursue that because it's a huge question. The ESF Families Guide, just as a matter of interest, VicPol has tailored that for VicPol, and they are now distributing that very widely across VicPol, and it has been really, really well received. So other agencies could obviously do that. And, we keep that as a live document that we can add things to. So, it may be that we consider adding an element on this Thrive idea into the booklet, which isn't there now. We could certainly be doing that. Are there any other questions?
Can I just make one more statement? I think
Sure.
that you asked me about the CARE acronym, and I think the acknowledgement is really important. I think in our all of our agencies and services, I think we tend to focus perhaps on things that aren't going well, regardless of whether it be through support mechanisms, but we don't often sit back and recognise and acknowledge really good performers and good people within the organisation. I think that goes a long way. When we do it, it's well received. So I love the fact that that's in your acronym there, and it really is about celebrating the good things, not just resting back on the things that don't go well, because I think that takes the momentum forward for the organisation.
And that was certainly, as the team said, part of a piece of research that a WPI group did a few years ago, where people said it's all very nice to be on the front page of the Herald Sun after a major bushfire, but that's not when we want our recognition. We want it for the day-to-day and all of the other things, that we do. If there's no more questions, I'm happy to take more questions, but I can't see any. Oh, Gary Caldwell, yes.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, team. That was a great presentation. I'm aware that there must have been a huge amount of work that's gone on behind the scenes. It's not easy to contact everyone and to analyse that into such a concise way. Just wondering from your perspective, what learnings you had about the process of doing this research. Is there anything you do differently, or things that went well in terms of how you contacted everyone and so on?
I would say one thing that we would probably do differently is probably try and identify where we wanted to look before we started looking, because when we were within the interviews and stuff, we learned a lot about the systems and like what organizations are doing, but kind of getting that information within the interviews kind of hindered how much we would get out of the first few. And then once we got it all picked up, it was good for the last, like, most of them. But understanding better, I think, what the programs were would have helped in our interviewing processes.
We did make it a bit easy for them, Gary, because behind the scenes, Joe Hood from my team had made all the interview appointments. So this group got off easy, because previous groups had to do it all themselves. But it is like herding cats, because they've got a very short period of time to do this work in. So Joe had to get people organised actually before the students arrived in Melbourne. But it is hard getting everybody together for sure. Tony.
Hello, thanks Susan, thanks team. That was a really good presentation. Thanks. I actually, unfortunately, I think it's technology in my end. I struggled with, I didn't see any of the slides or anything. I've just found them in the transcript in the side now, so I'll have to go back and look at what it was I missed when you were describing it, because I couldn't see them. But I think that's my end. Regardless, just a quick one for you. Is in the research you did, and the answer is probably no, but in the research you did you come across any other research that had been done into this by anyone else? And if you did, was there any sort of comparison or any sort of measurement that you were able to make against other jurisdictions that had looked at similar sorts of issues? I'm thinking that might be no.
No. They're all looking a bit surprised.
No,
so
that's okay. As I said, it was
no.
No,
but
that's
actually,
right.
Karina might be able to answer that in the sense of, what she knows that's going on in this space in other jurisdictions.
Yeah, that would be good.
What was the?
Sorry,
I'm having a coughing fit here. What was the question?
Sorry,
just
Karina.
wondering if you're
it's
aware.
Tony. My question was, I was asking the team that when they did their research, did they actually, as part of that, come across any other area or other jurisdiction that had looked into the same or similar topic? And if so, was there any sort of comparison that they were able to make against other findings? That was all.
Yeah, okay. You mean more around the whole spectrum and the work, or within the thriving kind of
thriving
lens?
component of it?
Yeah. I can really mostly only speak to where WA is at, and the work around this. And I definitely think that there's an expansion here around what has been kind of in the positive end of the scale. There has been, you know, this move from potentially what's been sort of looking at mental health awareness, stigma reduction, help seeking behaviour, and supports that sit around that, maybe even sort of what has been like more resilience kind of coping work, through to much more of a focus on what can we actually do from that meaningful. I think that whole, what was said before around recognition on a day-to-day basis and those sorts of injustices, that's definitely coming in, and that sort of using effective learning conversations and touch points that are here as well. So I can speak to it from there. I can also say that we've had agencies from New South Wales and we've had Queensland come, and it seems like a relatively, it's not obviously unfamiliar and it's recognised by everyone, but it seems to be more of a shift, I suppose, to opening up in this way. But I don't know of anything that can just be kind of grabbed or research that would replicate or be useful. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karina. I'm sure that this is really rewarding for the people that the team interviewed, to actually see how what they spoke about fed into this bigger picture. And, you know, it really serves two purposes. One is to give you food for thought, and one is to give ESF food for thought in terms of our strategy and some of the things that we could do. So having said that, I'm going to finish off now, and I'm going to say thank you to Leela, Jake, Abby and Mia for working with us and doing such a great job. But before I do, I'm going to turn it over to Sally you can see her piece of artwork coming together there. So Sally, do you want to perhaps explain that?
Yes, hi. Right, well, you're going to get a much more complete version than this, but I really wanted to make sure that this was centered as the core information that underpins the discovering of thriving at work and the recommendations and what the focus should be on. So I hope that this is something that you can take away, and it will not be, it's never, a graphic recording is never every single thing that is said. It's not a minutes taking exercise, but it's a visual overview to help you to trigger the memory of today's event and some of the things that were said. As visual learners, as humans, we tend to be able to retrieve a lot of the content in our memory just from a few small images like this. So I hope this will help you to further your work and to help with the improvements that you set forth to make from now. Thank you.
Thanks, Sally. So what's going to happen by the end of the week is we'll have a recording of this, we'll have Sally's diagram, and we'll have a summary, and we'll have the slides that the students used, all on ESF's website under the research tab. And we will also do an e-news to go out as well, that with links to various things on it. So thank you very much, team. Good job. Good job. I know I was a hard taskmaster at times, but thank you, Joe, as well, for being in the background and supporting the students so well. It was greatly appreciated. So, and thank you for coming and attending this session today. I hope you found it enjoyable. Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
Susan. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you as well, Susan.
Thanks, everyone.
I was gonna say, thanks for the help with everything so far along the journey.
Thanks, Doug.
you.
Thank you.